The Educational Technology Program at Central Michigan University presents EdTech Currents.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to EdTech Currents. My name is Kelvin Bird, and this is a great webinar at Central Michigan University. Today we have Miss Julie LaDell, and she is all the way in Atlanta, Georgia, and she is a doctoral student, or doctoral candidate, I should say, of the Doctorate of Educational Technology at Central Michigan University. So we'll welcome her to the show. And how you doing, Julie?
I'm great.
All right, awesome. So Julie and I have talked a little bit before the session, and she, comes from a very unique background. Born in Virginia and currently residing in Atlanta, and brings a great Southern perspective, a Southern style to CMU and the department that she's working with. Julie, if you will, tell us just a little bit about yourself and how you got affiliated with CMU.
Okay. Well, I've actually been a librarian with CMU Libraries for 12 years. So before I came to CMU, I worked for a nonprofit organization providing support and instruction to librarians. So when a friend told me about a position at CMU supporting distant students, I was interested in that because I really liked working with adult learners. So I came to CMU 12 years ago, and I have to say that part of my decision to move to CMU was the prospect of furthering my education. I had gotten my library science degree back in 1994.
Okay.
So working with CMU, I kind of always intended to continue my education, and I thought working for an academic library would be a great opportunity for doing that. See if there is anything else I wanted to mention to you. I started hearing about a doctoral program in educational technology a few years ago, and I was interested in it, but there was really no information. It was in development. I had no idea when it was going to come about. So while I was waiting for that to happen, I decided to go ahead and enroll in the Master of So I wanted to make sure that I could manage the workload and get back into academic writing. So it was kind of a test run to see if I could handle the doctoral program, which fortunately actually got finished and was available a couple years ago. So I applied for that and got in.
Awesome. Awesome. I know as we talked beforehand, you mentioned that you're really going to go through this program in about 3 years.
Yeah.
And I think that's a phenomenal accomplishment because we know that for individuals, most individuals, it takes a little bit longer, at least four, and sometimes longer than that. But tell us just briefly before we go into other things, how is it that you're able to get this done in such a short period of time?
Well, the program was set up so that you're taking two courses simultaneously every single term. So you get a couple of weeks between sessions, but there's no summer off or anything like that. And you do have to take the two courses at the same time. And
Hmm.
at the beginning of the program, I'd say that the courses were more distinct from one another. So you had a different set of assignments for one and the other. But as the program went on, there seemed to be a little more of a synchronicity between the two separate courses so that assignments were kind of carrying between the two. It's not that they didn't each have their own workload, but it all seemed to come together so that you didn't feel like you were laboring in two separate distinct classes as much. You could, do research and writing and have that work sort of apply to both classes at the same time. But it is, I mean, you have to come up with strategies for getting it done, having it work with whatever else is going on in your life. If you're working, if you've got family, all of that, you have to figure out your own method for fitting all of it in.
Makes sense. So
Yeah.
you've done this and you're doing it in a short period of time. You're getting the work done and finishing the assignments. What professor would you say has helped you along the way the most? What professor sticks out the most? And I know that there are many, but
Yeah.
who sticks out the most?
Yeah. Well, this is going to be sort of obvious, but I'd have to say that my dissertation advisor, Dr. Ming, is probably who I would pick. And the reason that I would say that is because with the two classes that I took with him, it was evident to all of us that he was very process oriented,
Okay.
and that sort of project man overwhelmed by the whole. So that approach to the coursework really kind of struck a chord with me. So that when it came time for the dissertation work, I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to be able to outline things and follow a process to get to the end. Um, it's not that it's inflexible. I mean, Lord knows I've changed things up quite a bit based on circumstances, but I needed to have a plan, and I thought that he would be the best person to sort of marshal me through all of that.
Well,
The other thing that I really like about him is that he has kind of a way for seeing the potential practical application of things. So for me, it's really helpful to understand how what I am learning applies in the real world. That makes it more meaningful and gives me sort of a sense of purpose about it. Something else that's very useful to have when you're writing a dissertation. He's got a good sense of humor, which I think you also need as you go through the program.
yeah.
So, that's why I think that working with him was probably uh, one of better experiences that I've had. Just as an example, in one of his courses, which was data-based decision making,
Mm.
normally, like throughout the program, when you're given an assignment, you can kind of steer the assignment in an area of interest, right? So I happen to be interested in mobile technology, so pretty much every assignment that I got, I turned it into something about mobile technologies in higher education. But in this database decision making course, we had to work with a data set that was based on K through 12 education.
Mm.
So I had to come up with a topic that fit that secondary data because that's what I had to use to write my paper. So I ended up picking a topic having to do with the relationship between technology and fourth grade reading. So I have never worked in elementary education. I don't know anything about fourth grade reading, but I had to use data and I knew enough, I guess, about technology to apply it. So I wrote this paper and I would have been perfectly content to submit it for a grade and forget about it. But after the class was over, Dr. Ming approached me and said, hey, what would you think of submitting this for publication?
Mm.
And I would have
Mm.
never thought to do that because I didn't feel like I had expertise. I was just writing a paper for a class, doing the best I could. But I had learned, how to analyze secondary data and write up my findings. So, having that opportunity to have it submitted for publication, which ultimately it was, instead of having that document filed away on my hard drive somewhere, I now am a co-author on a paper that was published in a journal. So having somebody like that to sort of nudge you in a direction that is not an obvious direction for you, I think is really useful.
Well, that's very powerful. So Dr. Ming is taking you to another level in the sense of more confidence in your work and things of that nature.
Right. Challenged my thinking and gave me enough encouragement to say, well, okay, let's give it a shot. So,
Yeah, and I'm sure all the other professors are doing that in
right,
one way or the other, but
right,
he sticks out in that realm. That's awesome,
right.
awesome, Julie. So if you will tell us at least three benefits that you're getting from being at CMU, and share that with us on your screen that looks like the Pink Floyd album cover.
Okay. Yeah, give me just a second to,
Okay.
show and tell. I figured people might want to look at something besides my smiling face while I do this. Let me share my screen. Oops. I have two monitors, so I have to make sure that it's the right monitor showing the right thing.
Okay.
All right. So now are you seeing the big monitor?
I can see it. Expertise and context.
Okay. So, all right. So what I mean by expertise and context, I think one of the big benefits of this program is that you get an opportunity to develop expertise in one particular area of interest. I did not know when I started the program that I was going to be interested in mobile technologies. but I was exposed to different ideas. Eventually, like some of those ideas kind of stuck and other ideas fell away. I think of it like almost like you're panning for gold, right? So you have a little screen and you start digging into the riverbed, and some of the stuff stays on the screen and a lot of it just sifts through the holes in the screen. So that's kind of how settling on my dissertation topic happened. I just was exposed to enough ideas, and eventually a few of them kind of stuck. And before I knew it, I had a dissertation topic that I wanted to pursue based on the things that I was exposed to through the regular coursework. So once those ideas kind of got caught, then I could dig deeper, learn more about it, examine the literature. And I think that what happens is that as you become more expert in whatever your area of interest happens to be and are exposed to what others have said on that topic, you start to kind of understand your role in what I call the information landscape, right? So information is being produced and consumed all the time, and through this process, you start to see where you fit in. So you're not only a consumer of information, which in a doctoral program you certainly are, but you start to see yourself as a producer of knowledge as well, which I think is really the transformation that you undergo when you're in a doctoral program. So that, to me, was a huge value.
Wow.
And I'm sorry if I'm coming at this with a librarian point of view, but that's what I am. So I think of things in terms of information a lot. So
That's fine.
The second thing, let me show you another pretty picture, is the collaboration. Being in a group of engaged and creative people. I think if you're a student in any type of program, that happens. If you're in an online program, it's more challenging. And I think that there was a recognition early on that if you have a fully online program, particularly a doctoral program, that you're going to have to work a little harder to make that collaboration possible. Because people are, number one, adult learners with competing interests. They're in remote locations. I happen to be in Atlanta. A lot of folks were in Michigan. We had someone who's in South Africa. So when you're working with a group of people that are geographically dispersed and sort of background dispersed, then you really have to be mindful of the fact that to feel like themselves. I think that one thing that this program did especially well was you learned to be very multimodal. So yes, there was certainly a lot of written text going around, but there was a lot of video recordings and show and tell. So you had to kind of present what you had to say in a lot of different styles to make sure that it was meeting everybody's needs. And I think in any kind of online program with adult learners especially, there's an element of self-direction. So part of the learning process was learning to select the appropriate tools for the task at hand. And especially since this is an educational technology program, that was part of the learning, right? So getting a sense of what tools could be used to connect with others in the most effective way was a big part of it. And of course, we were doing that for our coursework, but that's also what we're learning to do as the purpose of our program. So that was really useful. I wanted to mention that, because there are challenges, I wanted to mention that early in the program we were in a course that required us to do collaborative writing.
Okay.
And I have been writing all by myself for a lot of years. So learning to write collaboratively with other people was really quite challenging for me. And through a bit of trial and error, eventually I came to recognize that I was going to have to adapt, that everybody had something to contribute. Their styles might be different, their process might be different, but everybody had to bring something to the table. And only by recognizing that could I feel confident that the end product was representative of what we all had to bring to the project. So that meant for me letting go of a lot of the control that I had been accustomed to having for myself. And it's good and bad, right? If you're a person that likes to be in control, then letting go of control is challenging. But in the end, I think that it was gratifying to see that by letting go of my own control, the group kind of was able to produce a better product than I would have done on my own. So that was a good experience for me. I
Very,
don't know that everybody was as challenged as I was, but for me, it
very,
was a lesson learned.
that's a very powerful point. It seems like you're saying that you basically had to share the thoughts, share the ideas,
Yeah,
share the conceptual viewpoints
right.
with numerous people. Okay.
Right, and be open to learning from other people's
Mhm.
points of view.
Mhm.
And again, that adult learner thing comes in. It's the older we get, the more settled in our ways we get. So, learning to be open and not so stuck in your own way of thinking.
Mhm.
So, and over time you learn who is like-minded and who challenges your thinking,
Mhm.
right? And I think that's true with the professors as well. I mean, different professors would sort of I don't know how to describe it, but they would maybe read your paper and then they would kind of pick up on a few points to get you thinking a different way about them.
Mhm.
So it kind of felt like even if you submitted a paper and you were finished, you were never finished. It's like, oh, now I got to think about this some more. But
Great.
that's how you grow. So
Awesome. Great team building skills.
yeah,
Yeah.
so you suffer through it, but you still learn from it.
Okay.
And
All right.
then finally, the third thing, since we were talking about challenges, has to do with challenges. And I think this is more of like on a personal level
Okay.
than an academic thing particularly. I found that there were challenges intellectually. Again, my brain had been used to one way of thinking, one way of working, and I had to kind of shake things up with that. Um, there were some emotional challenges. Anytime that you're sort of tasked with work that seems beyond what you're capable of, you have to figure out ways to manage that work. And then just I say organizational, but it's really getting yourself organized to do what you need to do to get through um, what is ahead of you. So for me, because I had been away from school for a while, there's that sort of insecurity, I guess, about what am I capable of, right? What can I do? So it got, I wouldn't say easier, but it got more comfortable as I went along because I began to see what I was capable of. Like, oh, it takes me this long to write a paper. It takes me this long to
Okay.
read this material. Um, I can procrastinate on this, but I can't procrastinate on that. So you
Mhm.
start to figure out how you are going to be able to manage what you have to do. Um, I think that there's a bit of getting accustomed to the expectations of a doctoral program. As
Okay.
I said, you can't just submit the paper and walk away. There's more digging and more thinking to do. Um, you can't just take information in and regurgitate it back. You can take it in, but you have to change it or filter it in some way and create something new out of it. So that's a different way of thinking, and I think that going through the process of learning to do that has kind of altered the way that I'm going to be thinking for the rest of my life. Even when this
Wow.
program is done. Just having a different perspective on things.
So are you saying that this level of education is life changing for you?
Well, yeah, it probably remains to be seen, but I would think so, yeah,
Okay.
because you don't come out the same way that you went in. So transformative, hopefully
That's
for the better. Yeah,
awesome. Awesome.
yeah.
So,
And
and go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say the other challenge I already mentioned was the navigating new relationships. So with your peers, with professors, um, I think that whether you recognize it or not, you're going to have to navigate the way you work with others that are closer to you, like your coworkers and your family. Everybody's got something to give to support you through this process. So
Okay.
part of the growth for me, I think, was learning to ask for help or accommodation when I needed it, to be able to get me um, the time or the, you know, the lack of attention that sometimes that those other parts of your life get. So, that has to be taken care of. Um, I think that you come up with your own systems for organizing the work
Okay.
to sort of minimize the chaos, right? You want to feel like you're capable and in charge, and sometimes,
Hmm.
if you've got multiple due dates or whatever, it feels like you're not on top of things.
Hmm.
So I think it's really important to develop systems of work that will make you feel like you've got it under control. And you probably know this from your own experience that, if you don't have a system, it's easy to have things pile up on you.
That's very true. Yeah, in my program, as I mentioned earlier, as a doctoral or PhD fellow in educational leadership, I experience significant challenges, and we're in the classroom. We're right here on site,
Hmm.
and so I have to have somewhat of a system to keep me abreast of assignments, keep me going with upcoming due dates and things of that nature, as well as taking care of myself. So I
Right.
agree with you 100%. There has to be some type of systematic approach. You're right on.
Right.
Yeah.
And you mentioned taking care of yourself. I think that's an important thing to stress too. And I know that others in my cohort have said the same thing is you have to make time for some joy in your life, whatever it happens to be. I go to yoga classes a couple times a week just to,
All right.
you know, to have some time, to not think about everything else.
That's
And,
wonderful.
different people do different things, but finding some way to still enjoy, um, your day-to-day life even as you work towards this goal.
Awesome, awesome. I think that's great that you're going to yoga, you're taking care of yourself, you're really working hard. Just one last question before we close out. For the individual that might look at this webinar and wonder if they have the time for it because they're balancing so many other responsibilities, how many hours a week would you say that you're putting into this work? And also considering the fact that you're getting ready to accomplish this in a
Yeah.
3-year period. So how many hours a week are you putting into this?
That is really hard to quantify because I feel like if you undertake something like this, it would be sort of like starting a new job or something. You may not be in a particular place at a particular time doing active, productive work, but it's always with you. So let's say, like right now, I'm working towards completing a dissertation. I may not be sitting down and writing at all on a given day,
Okay.
but I've got things going on in my mind, having, oh yeah, and I need to remember to do this, or oh, I should have followed up on that. So even when it's not technically work, you're working in your mind. So, you know, throughout the entire program, it ebbs and flows. So there are times when, it feels like I spent every weekend, sitting 8 hours a day in front of my computer. There are other times when I blow the whole thing off all weekend long because I don't have a due date that following week, or I think I can get it done in a day. So, it's like anything else. You just sort of manage what you think you can get away with, in the course of a single week. So I don't have a really good answer. I can tell you that early in the program, everything seemed to take a lot longer than I thought it should because I was just trying to be really thorough, and I would be reading articles and have no idea what I was reading, and I'd have to reread it to get, so that seemed like I was working nonstop. But then later in the program, or for some courses that were maybe not as demanding, then I would feel, sort of guilty about not giving it a thought all weekend. But I know that I'd have to pay the piper, right? So no matter what you do in the course of a single day, your deadlines are there, your ultimate goal is there. I think I saved some time because I figured out early on what I wanted my dissertation topic to be. It morphed and changed course to course, but the whole time I was building towards that because I had assignments and I could make my assignment focus on the subject matter I was interested in. So I didn't feel like anything was wasted, and I kept everything. So any article I read and saved, I tried to tag it or name it in some way so I could find it again. so I could repurpose everything that I did. So any paper I wrote in the third course that I took probably reared its head again, at the last course that I took, and then maybe found its way into the dissertation. So, I mean, I guess what I'm doing is not answering your question, but I'm saying nothing is wasted. Any time you spend, whether it's actively doing something or just thinking about it, is going to contribute towards the end of the coursework. So I'd say, yeah, I worked nonstop. All day, every day, and still, right? I'm still doing that, but, not to the degree that I don't have a life, that I didn't do other things, I still have a full-time job, so,
And you're working for CMU. You're currently working for CMU as a
right,
librarian and
right,
assisting
which was,
students around the globe.
yeah,
That's a big
trust me,
responsibility
a big
as well.
benefit because I know how to use the library system. So,
I just might be calling you some more, Julie. Just
that's
might
right.
be calling you to utilize your skill set.
That's
So
right.
thank you so much for coming in today and sharing. And or actually, you're in Atlanta, I should say,
Yes.
and just connecting with me. I'm here in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. You're there in
Right.
Atlanta, Georgia, and it's amazing what this technology can do. And
I know.
Julie Liddell is a librarian at CMU, and she is in Atlanta, Georgia, and she is finishing her doctorate program in educational technology. Julie, you have one last bit of advice for any potential student out there.
You know, all I would say is you don't know what you can achieve until you get in it. So if I waited for permission or 100% confidence to get started on something new, I wouldn't be a librarian. I wouldn't be in this program. Every step of the way, you just sort of jump in and then you figure it out.
Awesome. Hey, thanks for that bit of advice. Everyone, this is Ed Tech Currents at Central Michigan University, March the 29th, 2018. Thank you for your time. Have a
Thanks,
great day.
Kelvin.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Julie. Bye-bye.
Join the conversation on our next EdTech Currents.